So what do you have for us
What
today?
do I have for us today? Well, a couple months ago, in June 22nd, Russell Glasser did a show on financial scams.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that.
I was
But
here.
it was a very good show, and he talked about sort of how financial scams work and that sort of thing. And I had been meaning for a long time to talk about religious financial scams, and it's a very, very, very big topic. You know, I feel like this is part one of 80 billion. I don't think I'm going to hit it every week for the next, rest of my life. But I did want to, bring up this topic. I'm just going to scratch the surface today and have a little fun with it. And in effect, these financial scams are a earthly reason not to believe. So we very often focus on theological stuff and why that's not convincing us, that sort of thing. Well, here's a completely different way of looking at the problem. Look at how religions actually work in the real world and ask yourself, is this an organization that you trust? Given that they're doing these scams, how can you trust this? And how can you trust anything they say? How can you trust them on the big issues if you can't trust them on the little day-to-day issues, right? So
As kind of a preemptive example, there's a little factoid which I'm going to do off the top of my head, so the numbers aren't necessarily completely correct. In that famous December '05, I guess, edition of Mother Jones that talks about church-state separation, where the Christian life truly, there's a section on charitable donations and who gives what to whom and how much. One of the interesting things is there are websites, if you're interested in giving to a charity, there are websites you can go to that evaluate charities to determine how much of every dollar you donate actually goes towards the cause as opposed to administrative costs, overheads, whatever else. And some of the claims made by some of these organizations, I don't want to flatly claim that anybody's dishonest. They may represent this honestly. But, for example, after the tsunami, Focus on the Family listed a donation of, I don't know how many, maybe it's $2 million or something like that, but included 1 million copies, 1 million copies of one of James Dobson's books. It's something like
holy moly.
When God does things we don't understand, or something like that. I can't remember the title of the book. Somebody will know. I don't know what the going price was for each of those 1 million copies, but if their total donation was like 2 million, and that included 1 million copies, those books, if they were $1 a piece, that's already half of the donation. So it's a way of kind of like fluffing the numbers and saying, oh, we donated $2 million in charity aid to the tsunami victims.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if the tsunami aid victims need a
Yeah.
book necessarily. Maybe they need some food or.
You sent them 1 million copies of proselytizing, and books are made of paper.
Yeah.
And in a flood
waterlogged.
zone,
They get waterlogged.
paper's probably not the best thing to send. I don't care what you wrote on it, unless it was a check. But anyway, go on with your stuff. I didn't mean to derail us.
All right.
I'm not a Dobson fan.
The title of the show is called Scamlets, and it's a tongue-in-cheek thing. It's a word I made up, and it's not yet a word, but let's make it one. And the definition is a simple, reusable scam that religions use to make money and control people. So I'm going to focus on 5 things today that are used over and over and over again. And once you recognize those things, you'll see them all over. And I think it's good for folks to be aware that these things are there. So, and the common thread of all of these things are that the people that are taken in by the scam are being lazy and allowing others to think on their behalf. And if you do that, if you allow other people to think for you, their agenda is going to be put in the mix, and they don't necessarily have your interest at heart. It's very simple sort of conflict of interest issue. If you're allowing somebody else to think for you, you're in effect giving up some of your control over what you do to them. And very often people have a profit motive in doing this. So religions are based on this idea. They glorify faith, which I consider to be gullibility. I've talked about that. They manufacture and perpetuate ignorance and glorify blind following. And they reap the rewards of this. We have a caller already.
I apologize
for
interrupting.
Have a caller.
I just want to make a note. I realize that there's one caller, and I know last week we took lots of calls. I want to let Don get through a chunk of this before we actually take calls. Feel free to hang on the line. We'll get to you. You're still first.
Yeah, let me get through maybe 2 of them, and then we'll take some calls, and we'll come back and do the rest.
Sure.
How about that? Okay. So religions, I think, are based on these scamlets. I think that they use them, and it's the basic reason why so many religious leaders are con artists. We have seen that all the time with Ted Haggard and Ken Hovind and Dobson, Kennedy. All these folks are making money through these scams. All the faith healers, for example. This is no shortage of these. So they all make their living selling crap, and they're very good at it. Some are very good at it. So lest you think I'm making this up, let's take some quotes from religious leaders in their own words and see if that bears out. So Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism, reason is the devil's greatest whore. By the nature and manner, she is being a noxious whore. She is a prostitute. The devil's appointed whore. You get the whore thing, right? Whore eaten by scab and leprosy, who ought to be trodden underfoot and destroyed, and she and her wisdom. Throw dung on her face and make her ugly. This is all about denigrating reason. She is and ought to be drowned in baptism. She would deserve the wretch to be banished by the filthiest place in the house to the closets. Okay. Here's another one.
I must say, though, that there are a number of apologists, I won't name any comfort names, who seem to hold very
similar
close
ideas
to Luther, in that while they may not say, spread dung in the face of reason, they sure do spread a lot of dung in the face of reason in their arguments.
Yeah. Well, I think they have to in order to get their point across. Here's one from Tertullian. I believe because it is impossible.
Yeah, I love that.
Thomas Aquinas, belief is the greatest of sin. Unbelief is the greatest of sins. Here's James Dobson. Those who control what young people are taught and what they experience, what they see, hear, think, and believe, will determine the future course for the nation. So those are some religious quotes that kind of confirm what I'm saying. And what do atheists think of this? Well, some of the atheists say things like Richard Dawkins says, faith is the great cop-out, the great excuse to avoid the need to think. So everybody's kind of saying the same thing here. Christopher Hitchens, religion is a poison because it asks us to give us our most precious faculty, which is that of reason, and to believe things based on evidence, without evidence. It then asks us to respect this, which it calls faith. And another one, beware of allowing others to interpret reality on your own behalf. Who said that? Me.
I was going to say, I didn't.
Okay, I'm a great atheist. What do you know? So today I want to look at 5 different scamlets, and I've given them names. One is called special knowledge or power. One is called stealing credit. One is called future reward. Fourth is codependence, and the last one is sin. So those are the ones I want to cover today. I am just scratching the surface. There's plenty more. And we welcome callers. Call in and tell us, what you think of these, whether you've seen these sorts of things, whether you have additional examples. So what I'm going to do is go through each of these and talk about how it works and give some examples of it, and then, of course, why you shouldn't believe in it. So that's the structure of the show. I want to hit 5 of those. I don't know whether we'll make it through all 5, but did you have anything? No, go ahead.
Let's go.
Special knowledge and power. So priests and ministers and imams all claim, their main claim to fame is that they have some special relationship with the big guy, Hank, that relationship can help you immensely if only you'll do a little favor for them in return. So that's the basis of this. So tithing, you end up giving your tithing to the church in order to reap these benefits of the special knowledge, special power. You give your life over to God. You spread the good news. You raise your children in the religion and those sorts of things. Those are the types of things you give in return. These folks may, here's some examples. They may offer you protection from the evils of the world.
By the way.
Yes.
To be fair, and before anybody calls in, although maybe I should just let somebody call in and then we can correct it after the fact. We're not necessarily painting all believers with the same brush. And we're not saying Don's kind of scam thing is a simplification so that you can understand it's not like a preacher gets up there and says, I got a special hotline to God, and if you give me money, I'll hook you up. It's couched slightly more subtle.
Oh yes, it's much more subtlety. Right? So I'm given the kind of
but by giving the caricature, hopefully you can identify it, because This is, in fact, what happens. And you see it all the time. You see ministers say, you're not giving money to me. You're giving money to the Lord to carry on the Lord's good work so that we can keep doing what we need to do. And if the Lord happens to give me a private plane and a Mercedes in order to do that work, that's his choice.
I love it, Matt. You should be a minister.
I should have been. I'd be freaking rich.
You'd be freaking rich.
And I wouldn't be sitting here on
Get
on
your
TV.
money for nothing and your chicks for free. Okay. Okay.
It's easy to get money that way because, well, go ahead.
Okay.
We'll get to the justifications behind it.
So I thought of a number of examples. We can probably think of a dozen more, but they may offer you protection from the evils of the world, such as offering you amulets or special
Prayer cloths.
Prayer cloths. That's a good one, right? Rod Parsley, who happens to be the spiritual advisor of John McCain, runs a scam where he blesses these little towels that he calls them prayer cloths, and you're supposed to wipe them somewhere and get these special benefits from that, and that's a little scam he runs, and that's how he makes his money. Welcome to America. Okay, so amulets, relics. The Catholic Church was very big on this, especially in medieval times. They would have shrines you'd go to and pray and hopefully get the blessings of that particular shrine. Guadalupe is an example of that. There are tons and tons more.
Selling of indulgences.
These sorts of things.
Which they've stopped doing. So, I'm curious. I mean, on the one hand, we'd like to say that some religions have gotten better. Like I mentioned last week, we had to drag some of them kicking and screaming towards, decent, ethical, moral treatment of other people. So, we want to make sure we give the Catholics full credit for their ability to stop selling indulgences and stop denigrating science all the time. And
they needed a little encouragement along the way.
Stop killing people for not believing. I mean, let's give them some credit there. So don't write me and say that I don't give religion credit for anything. On the other hand, I don't know. Let's imagine you've got a little kid and he's running around the table at a restaurant, biting people on the legs and kicking them. Do you give him a reward when he stops? Or do you not expect that, you're supposed to have stopped? You shouldn't have been doing that in the first place. And now that you've stopped, I'm going to stop yelling at you and beating the crap out of you. Not that I'm advocating, but that's the point. How much benefit do you give somebody when they stop doing the wrong thing? It's okay to say, hey, we're really glad that you stopped being such an ass. But
you should have done that anyway.
I shouldn't have to keep heaping praise on you because you stopped being an ass. How many times do we have to say, yes, it's nice that the Catholic Church has stopped selling indulgences and killing people? I don't need to say it every week. Do something new to earn a little praise. Drop some of the, various policies that you have with regard to charitable giving when it comes to things that violate your personal religious beliefs. But anyway.
So we talked about amulets and these sorts of things. Well, even in modern times, it's a very common topic, protection from evil as a sermon topic, right? Billy Graham was, I understand, the master of this. He would go on and on at the beginnings of the sermons about how we have a fallen world and it's a terrible place, and if you just give yourself over to God and Jesus, things will be okay. And so he's offering you this protection from the evils of the world. You see this play out in the rhetoric of the religious right that the liberals are evil and we need to have protection from the liberal agendas and gays and all these things. And
by the way, for the people who may be objecting to this, about saying that it's a scam, who think that there's actually something real in it, this isn't limited to Christianity or any one religion or anything else. You see this all the time. You walk into any New Age woo-woo shop and they're freaking happy to sell you amulets and blessed this and charmed that.
Yeah.
The scam is universal. And if you look at those and say, those aren't real but mine are, you really need to provide a justification that is investigatable, verifiable, independently confirmable. Otherwise, you're engaged in a bit of special pleading. You are dismissing those things that you consider absurd without evidence, and then allowing a few extras in because they're your personal beliefs. These are the ones you prefer or that you were raised with. I'm not interested in that. I mean, I am interested in finding out what people believe and why. But if your best justification is this is just what I believe, Well, we don't need to bother talking about it because you can offer nothing more to substantiate your claims than the crystal power morons. Oh, I said I wasn't going to call people morons anymore. I'm a liar.
You're a liar.
Have you ever told a lie? What does that make you? A liar.
Yeah.
All right. So the crystal power crowd, who are morons.
The Apostle Paul was also a liar, by the way. Anyway.
You think?
Okay.
So
here's another variation of the special knowledge and power, and they may offer you to fix your problems. So if you're sick, a faith healer might want to extract a little money out of you to do some cure you of whatever ill you have, and we can talk a lot about that in a little bit. They may offer to fix your money woes. So the prosperity gospel, which is very, very popular, is based on this idea that if you give a little bit of money to your church or whatever and earn God's favor, God will you'll reap the rewards of God's blessings and make a lot of money. And it works on a confirmation bias thing, right? So it's a scam in that if there is a success, then they take credit for it, which is coming up later, taking credit.
Right.
If there's not a success, well, you haven't given enough. So either way, they win, right? It's heads you win.
Or they're just not going to report it.
You
You're never going to hear about the cases where it failed, where somebody donated the last of their checking account and then ended up in a soup kitchen the next week because it didn't work out.
So this is the basis of the prosperity gospel. Yep. We've already talked about indulgences, blessings, prayer rugs. We've talked about those sorts of things. So this is how it works. So let's do a little thought experiment. I believe. Have you ever read a comic book?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I believe that comic books actually address having special knowledge and has special powers much, much better than religions do. I think that they actually get to what are the moral issues and things. So in comic books, it never works like religion does, right? And so in comics, and I would say that the comic books are more true to life even, right? So how does that work? Well, in the comic books, the people that have these special powers actually use them.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't actually sell them to people for little bits of money here and there. They don't pretend to use them. They actually use them. And they struggle with the moral issues involved in whether they should use them and when they should use them and these sorts of things. And these are the big themes in these superhero comic books. And they use them to fight crime or save the world or help people. And they struggle with issues of personal gain and whether or not they're using those powers for themselves or for others and how to best use them, all these things. So this is really what it would be like if there was special knowledge or special power.
Yeah, it reminds me not only of the whole many people who claim different psychic powers, the ability to talk to the dead or predict the future or find whatever. All of a sudden, when put to the test, they can no longer demonstrate their power. So we got a problem there with the efficacy of their claim. But going to the comic book things, would it be morally unjustified for, let's say, Spider-Man, since he seems to be the favorite on the show, to take a tip?
Right.
Like if somebody steals your purse and Spider-Man swoops in and bangs the guy over the head and recovers your purse, would it be unethical for him to take a small tip? I don't think so, but he'd turn it down.
That's right. He provided a service.
This is some kind of upstanding superhero thing. But I wouldn't have too much of an objection with it. Would it be wrong for Spider-Man to sell out his services to corporations who needed protection? No, I don't have any problem with that at all. He's putting his powers to ability.
It's honest work, right?
But what if Spider-Man started a monthly subscription service where you could pay $50 a month, and as long as he wasn't busy with something else, he might swing over and protect you from something if it went wrong? Now you're getting closer to what these scamlets end up doing, where they promise something, but it's not without its hitches, and it may not come true. And if it doesn't come true, it's not the person doing the scam who's at fault. It's you. Most of the time. Occasionally it may be God decided not to do this, but usually that's because you've done something. And so that's not any different from, I would have loved to come and saved you from those muggers, but I was stopping a bank robbery downtown, and I can't be at two places at once. So, we couldn't honor your request this time. Maybe next time.
Keep the money flowing.
Keep it coming in. That's what these scams end up doing.
Yeah,
And granted, You say, well, I don't have a monthly subscription. Oh, really? I think if you look up Tithe, oh, sorry, that's a weekly subscription. Shoot.
For people who don't know, tithe means tenth.
Yes.
And it's basically this this supposed obligation that you're supposed to give a tenth of your income to the church that you belong to, and it's changed in meaning over time to mean just your
to
duty,
mean 20% sometimes.
You had your duty to pay the church.
Yeah. There are a lot that run with this tithe plus an offering, and that's the prosperity gospel. At least within Christianity, is backed up by biblical passages, and I'm not going to find it, but if somebody in the back room wants to find it, about casting your bread upon the water and it's going to return on every wave, basically you're going to get threefold, sevenfold, depending on whatever. And they take this, and which I would think could be an actually true and beneficial idea if it's viewed as a general rule of thumb about how you treat people. That there's no guarantee that if I'm friendly to people, they are going to be friendly to me. There's no, cause and effect relationship there. But we know, as a general rule of thumb, that if you are pleasant to people, they are more likely to be pleasant to you. And that if you live your life, being, for the most part, morally correct and caring and kind to people, that you are more likely to receive those benefits, and you may get back more than you put in. Not necessarily threefold or sevenfold, but to take this and spin it in a way where, it says right here in the Bible, and therefore, if you send me a check, I realize somewhere out there's a little old lady who just got that $1,000 Social Security check. And you're thinking, what do I need to do with this? I need to buy groceries. I need to do this and that. But if you actually send that into me, God has told me that the sacrifice that you make will be returned to you tenfold.
And they say it with a straight face.
Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen, there's video footage out there.
There's a lot of desperate people out there that want that to be true.
It's not just them asking for money. You look at some of these shysters, and they will flat out say, they'll make a claim about a little old lady with a Social Security check, because guess who's mostly watching? And when they make a claim like that, maybe it's right for 50 different listeners.
Or
and
thousands.
Each one of them thinks that he's talking to them, that he's got a special word of knowledge from God about them and their check that they just received. And if you get more specific about it, like if you know what the standard Social Security check is, you don't have to, don't round it off. I know that in Detroit right now, there's a woman who just got a check for $850. You do something like that. If you have your show broadcast to enough people, some of the crap you fling is going to stick somewhere, and you get money for nothing.
Well, these are unverifiable claims. Nobody in the audience can verify this claim.
Yeah.
Right, and that's how it works, right? But he might be convincing, he might be believable, he might have a lot of charisma, and people buy into it, and they don't realize they're being taken in. So that's why they call it a con game. It's confidence, right? You've earned the confidence of these people, and they're giving you money.